Coming up on show 700, the first drive of the Polestar 2. It's a mass market make or break EV. But what's it like? Stick around, we'll tell you more. Also coming up on the podcast today, loads of chargers coming to India. A teardown of the Model 3 reveals something about the new hardware version 3. Fastned getting some more customers, a new EV van, and Tesla may have acquired a new lithium-ion battery cell startup. But is it a big deal? We're going to find out more about that story and lots more on the podcast today. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening in the world. Welcome to EV News Daily. My name is Martin Lee, and 700 times I've said that intro, and thank you so much. Here is your podcast for Monday, 17th of February. I go through every EV story that I can find, so you don't have to. How do we get to 700 shows? Wowzers! Thank you so much. For those, there must be somebody listening right now who has listened from the very first show. Maybe not listened on day one, when I first put a podcast out, but maybe someone who had some long journeys to do or something and just listened back to the very first show. That'd be amazing to know if I could find anyone who's actually listened to all the way back to the beginning. If you have listened to all 700 shows, you deserve some sort of award or something. I was hoping to announce the 2 millionth listen of this podcast, but we're about 30,000 away. So when we get there, I'll tell you. 2 million downloads for this podcast. Pretty cool. Well, this doesn't happen very often, but I would like on show 700 to say welcome to a new premium partner of the podcast. A fourth name to add to the list. You know what? This whole EV, clean energy, battery, renewables thing is opening up so many new careers for people. So many people that are interested in this, but never thought they could do it as a job. So I was talking about that recently on the podcast and saying, wouldn't it be interesting to get really into how, if you want to change your career, maybe pick up some part-time work, a second job, or maybe change your career entirely, how do you do that in the EV space? How do you get a job doing what we talk about on this show all the time? So the two founders of Brightsmith reached out to me. I was talking to Adam Smith and Tommy Bright. There you go. You can see where the name comes from now. Both directors and co-founders of the company, both got big histories in identifying and attracting and placing talent with some of the world's biggest companies. They are recruitment experts, and they both feel very compelled to, well, as their website says, live your purpose. And so they've started a new business all about placing people in the kind of industries that we talk about. And we've been talking and saying, actually, can you tell me more about this? And I was picking their brains. And in the end, they wanted to come on board as a premium partner of this podcast. Thank you so much. If you'd like to find out more, by the way, and maybe you think, okay, maybe there's a future career for me or someone I know, family or friend member, in sustainability, in EVs, and future mobility, in smart cities, then check out brightsmithgroup.com. That is brightsmithgroup.com. And a wonderful bit of news for show 700. Another company that is putting the hand in their pocket and paying for this podcast to happen so you can listen to it gratis. We'll tell you more about Brightsmith over the coming days and weeks, and how you, if you're interested in getting into these industries that we talk about, well, maybe how you can benefit from it. And thank you for your reviews recently as well. C. Cooper42 on Apple Podcasts has been listening for a while. Martin does a world-class job of bringing us the news every day. If you live in EV world or planning to, add this to your playlist. And a great review by Auntie ABC from Apple Podcasts Australia. Thanks, Martin, for making a great podcast full of info on what's happening around the world in electric cars. And finally, Mikey7MC on Apple USA says, I've been listening to Martin's show for well over a year now. Don't know how I found it. He's made me so knowledgeable about EVs. I give insight to my employer, who happens to be a large US electric utility. Interesting. Well, okay, let's get on with the news. Oh, by the way, I should say, from not quite from the beginning, but from a long way back, this show has been supported by myev.com. If you're in the USA, you don't know how lucky you are to have an amazing resource like myev.com for buying and selling and learning about EVs. So after the limited run of the Polestar 1, which was effectively a very powerful combustion fossil car, but albeit with a big battery, 100 miles of range on a very big battery on the Polestar 1, the Volvo spin-off performance company have launched the Polestar 2, described as a make-or-break EV, says Richard Lane from autocar.co.uk, who took this car for a spin. And yes, they were impressed. No beating about the bush, he says. The Polestar 2 is good to drive. It may never set your synapses on fire, but the natural steering response is well matched to what the suspension is doing. And on the quick handling course, the dampers, hydraulically textured in their movements. Only ever need one bite of the cherry to get the car under control. You can see this is a driver's car, and actually Autocar really impressed with this. Barring the small boot, they say, and poor rearward visibility, the Polestar 2's cabin is superbly conceived, whereas the Model 3 goes for an expansive, minimalist ambience. This is more classically enveloping. The powertrain on this is pretty powerful. 402 brake horsepower, by the way, on the Polestar 2. It's going to set you back about £50,000. I will let you do the conversion for the currency of where you are in the world, bearing in mind that we add 20% VAT to all our prices. So, I want to take off 10 grand of that and then add your own local taxes. £50,000 for a dual motor car with 402 brake horsepower. It's a single-speed gearbox, by the way, just weighs just over 2,000 kilograms. Top speed is limited to 140. 0 to 60 is 4.7. WLTP range on this is 311 miles, and it's going to come with a 78 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery. Not sure whether that 78 kilowatt-hour battery is gross or net. In other words, that's what they let you use. However, it's certainly a lot cheaper than the hand-built £140,000 Polestar 1, which was just a very expensive, high-powered plug-in hybrid at the end of the day. Volvo's Polestar 2 is stunning. My personal take on it, by the way, the styling of this really suits my taste. Maybe it's a European taste, I'm not sure. Clearly, I love a lot of the EVs that are around at the moment. Love the SUVs that are around, like the Audis, the Mercedes, and Jaguar I-Paces. But for a sedan, for a saloon-style car, this is really nice. The styling of the Polestar, very contemporary, kind of aggressive. I like it. I like inside. I like it out. I've looked inside one of these, by the way. Had a good poke around inside a Polestar 2, and it's a really nice place to be. I'll pop a link to Autocar in the show notes if you want to read more. Well, in Mumbai, Tata Power is planning to increase its network of EV charging stations to 700 by next year. The company's already installed 100 fast charging stations in Delhi, Mumbai, and Hyderabad, other places as well around India. And that's going to be 300 by next month in March, and then they're going to increase that to 700 by next year. The Indian EV market is not quite fully grown yet, but it will, I think, explode at some point, and it's going to be a massive market, isn't it? Okay, let's talk Tesla, and I retweeted this article today, and it just blew up. It was one of those things that people saw and just retweeted and commented and ran with it. Tesla's had a teardown of one of their Model 3s, and particularly of the hardware in Hardware 3. And the quote is that it's 6 years ahead of Toyota and VW. Now, I know that various companies are ahead in various different things, and Tesla have been working on this for 10 years single-mindedly. The only thing they've thought about is battery technology, electric motors, self-driving, that everything that is in their cars today has been their single point of focus. But Toyota and Volkswagen, who each sell 10 million cars, give or take, every year, compared to Tesla, they're the big boys. Tesla did about 350,000 last year, plus they'll deliver their millionth vehicle sometime soon. But when it comes to electronics, Tesla is far ahead of the industry giants, says this article. That's the takeaway from Nikkei Business Publications' Teardown. They got themselves a Model 3 and tore it apart. What stands out most, they say, is Tesla's integrated control unit, full self-driving, Hardware 3. And here's the quote, "This little piece of tech is the company's biggest weapon in the burgeoning EV market. It could end the auto industry's supply chain as we know it." According to Nikkei Asian Review.com, one stunned engineer from a major Japanese automaker examined Hardware 3 and declared, We cannot do it. That's the quote. We cannot do it. So this is the model that's been, Hardware 3's been shipping in Model 3s and S's and X's for a while now, and if you paid for full self-driving back when you got your car, but you got Hardware 2.5 or previous, of course, you at some point will have that upgraded in your Tesla. So what is it about full self-driving? Is it the custom AI chips? Is it the fact that there's a custom water-cooled heatsink? Even the self-driving computer has water cooling between the two boards. What is it about it that is so far ahead? Surely anything that can be goes through a teardown, in my tiny brain, anything that you can tear down that's got a printed circuit board on and some chips, you can tear it down within a few days or weeks. You can probably copy it. So I don't know how rivals are 6 years behind. That's frightening if it were true. I don't, from my perspective, I don't see how that can be true. But if it were, even if they were 3 years ahead, think of that, like Tesla aren't just going to all go on holiday for 3 years. They're going to carry on doing the development that they do. And the other car makers, how can they be 6 years behind? Anyway, that's according to one engineer. Now, of course, Model Y just around the corner, and then Cybertruck, Tesla Semi, new Roadster, which is the dessert, as Elon describes it. Dessert. Roadster won't be the thing that they focus on. However, that's incredible for the hardware that's going to be going inside those cars. Let me know what you think about that story, because it's one of those ones where obviously the Tesla fans retweeted me and they loved it. They loved that idea that Tesla's 6 years ahead of everybody else. It just seemed like Toyota's the biggest car company on the planet. Are Tesla that far ahead? Goodness me. I love learning about this stuff, but sometimes I don't just parrot the headlines that I see. Always got to question it and try and do your own critical thinking. Here in Europe, Fastned, some more news. Fastned, the charging network, got 30,000 extra potential customers in the last quarter of 2019. The Fastned network, they say, was built to create and service future demand, according to this Clean Technica article. The travellers who on their highways will see the recognisable yellow Fastned stations. They're the ones that have covers over the top. And thank you, Fastned. Thank you for putting covers over your chargers. Lots of people are fans of their fast chargers, and their kilowatt hours delivered per quarter has been going through the roof lately. So congratulations to everyone at Fastned for installing, firstly, the older 50 kilowatt chargers, then the 175s, now the new 350 kilowatt chargers. They've been doing it in more cities all over Europe. In fact, coming to the UK last year and opening the first few as well, which is just brilliant. I've never had the chance to use a Fastned charger, but congratulations on your record usage numbers. Lots of people email me and say, can you give me advice on commercial vehicles? I need a work van. What work van EV can I get? And I've got no good answer for them at the minute. DPD, the delivery company, has just ordered 100 electric vans, though, made by MAN, as in M-A-N. Yep, it's a commercial maker that you may or not have heard of. Following the order recently for the ENV 200 vans, of which DPD bought 300 of those, they have now ordered these 3.5-ton vans called the ETGE, based on the Volkswagen e-Crafter platform. And for those that need to carry a lot in the back of a 3.5-ton van, kind of panel van, high-sided, big double doors at the back, that kind of thing, this could be the van you want. Then again, it only does 70 miles. That's 113 kilometers range in the real world. The battery pack is shared with something a lot smaller, the Volkswagen e-Golf, 35.8 kilowatt hours. The great thing about vans is they have a really big footprint, if you like a chassis, a big, flat. So many vans are, or that type of vehicle, body on frame, it would just suit a really big battery. So a bit frustrating that you're going to be carrying possibly a lot of weight in your cargo, and it's an old battery as well. So you're not going to get much more than, what is it on the e-Golf? Something like 40 kilowatts, maybe 50 kilowatts on DC fast charging on the CCS combo plug. Anyway, it's not about 0 to 60. It's not about speed on this one. It should be about a bit more range than that, though. Hey, here's a story that I came across over the weekend, and I didn't think too much of it, but I'll report it and see what you think of it. Recent observations by the Tesla community say that Tesla could have bought a new small lithium-ion battery cell specialist from Colorado. Reported by Simon at Teslarati, Galley of the YouTube channel Hyperchange, which I'm fully aware of. Must confess, I'm not one that is going to sit and watch a lot of the financial stuff. He seems like a nice guy, but I know he does a good job, and he seems to have dug into this, and one of these startups could have been bought by Tesla, a lithium-ion technology company. It's called SILLION, SILLION. Small company, says Teslarati, that is working on battery high-loading silicon anode and electrode technology for cylindrical cells. The company's tech delivers a breakthrough in high-energy batteries and simultaneously incorporates high-loaded silicon anodes and nickel-rich NMC cathodes. That sounds right up Tesla's street, but no official word, though. Let's move on. And an article in the Times newspaper today. I was delighted to read this because the Times put most of their stuff behind a paywall, and I'm cheap and I don't pay for their hundreds of pounds for their subscription. So it was nice to see an article that they'd not put behind the paywall that we could read. Shell has agreed a China deal to bolster green power. They'll supply the grid using a giant battery. Royal Dutch Shell has thrown its weight behind a Chinese-backed energy storage venture, building what is claimed to be Europe's largest battery in the sometimes sleepy county of Wiltshire. It's a 100 megawatt battery near the village of Mintney to provide backup to the national grid when renewables need a little bit of stability on the grid. You can charge the battery when electricity is cheap, discharge it at peak times when prices are high, or just when you need it just to stabilise those renewables if you like. The Times newspaper says the tie-up coincides with the growing scrutiny of the involvement of Chinese companies in infrastructure projects like Hinkley Point's nuclear plant. And even yesterday the government had to deny they were in talks to give some business to the Chinese in terms of a new railway. So that's being watched very carefully. But in terms of what 100 megawatt hours of electricity can do, well, it can power about 10,000 homes for a day. And a couple of years ago, remember that Shell bought First Utility, a domestic power supplier. BP, one of their competitors, bought ChargeMaster and renamed it BP ChargeMaster. So it's interesting, these developments, these investments that are happening in this kind of space. I love it. I love it. I know lots of people are kind of anti-oil companies. I get where you're coming from. I do understand that. I do sympathise as well. A lot of these companies, not necessarily the ones that I've named above, but a lot of these fossil fuel companies have done enormous damage to the planet. So there's been oil spills and various ecological disasters. And I'm not forgetting that. I do recognise the things that they've done very badly, but I always like to see some investment in renewables, in storage, in EVs, in charging and things like that. And let's stay with this topic of conversation. A pioneering floating, you heard me correctly, floating PV project installed in the North Sea last year has ridden out the first few months of operation in the open ocean, including a couple of big storms that have just blown through the UK. For those following the news will have seen all the news of flooding and terrible weather here in GB right now. But this floating PV array, which is in the Dutch North Sea, has coped admirably. It's the world's first offshore solar array, and it's been fighting weather conditions of 62 knots of wind and 5-metre-high waves, and it's done just fine. The website rechargenews.com says the system, which was designed to withstand the extremes of the North Sea, recently doubled in size to 17 kilowatts, with plans for the array to be expanded further to expand it to 1 megawatt and then grow the installations towards 100 megawatts once this technology has been proven. Really interesting stuff, actually. Out to sea, if you ask me how electricity is generated, you'd say, oh, well, wind turbines, offshore wind turbines. You wouldn't think a floating platform, which is small at the moment, I must admit. It's a small floating platform, but it's a test case. I wouldn't have said solar panels on the sea, but it's working. My goodness me, there's stuff that I learn every day. I just love finding things out like this. Okay, let's talk about leasing right now. And leasing customers are looking to snap up electric vehicles before a possible end to a subsidy here in this country, a £3,500 subsidy for plug-in vehicles. Latest figures from leasing.com show that pure EVs accounted for 5% of all leasing inquiries in January. That's twice that of the overall car market share. Nissan Leaf was the most popular all-electric model to be inquired about in January. But the plug-in car grant, which is available as money off a car, has been coming and going in this country. And I've had a look today, and I still can't find a definitive answer. There are some websites that say the plug-in car grant is going, definitively. And other people that say, well, it's not that it's going, it's that our government haven't confirmed that it's staying. Which one is it? That's really confused me today. Fascinating stuff. Really, really interesting. Man, it's been a good show today. Show 700 has filled me with optimism about our future. Really loved it. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you if you've heard 1 or 700 of these podcasts. Right, question of the week. I would love to hear from you. If you want to, you can get in touch with me and answer question of the week. And I'll read out yours on a Sunday's show. If you haven't heard yesterday's show, by the way, it was a bit of a mammoth show, but loads and loads of emails to get through. And I really enjoyed reading out those ones yesterday. But a brand new question of the week then, with myev.com, inspired by Tesla turning on the rear heated seats for an extra $300 actually, on a software over-the-air update. That was the news yesterday. For those that bought a cheaper Model 3, the hardware's in the back seats for them to be heated, but you didn't get them with the car. But they've now said, give us another $300 and we'll turn them on with an over-the-air update. Is this the way that EVs will be going? Are you happy to pay extra for add-on features or apps for your EV after you've bought the car? Or the car that you've bought is the car that you've bought? What do you think? Are you happy to be paying extra, stumping up extra money for more features, more apps, maybe things that weren't available when the car was made, even after you've bought the car? Or do you not like the way that this is going? Let me know. Email me, hello@evnewsdaily.com with your thoughts, and I'll pass them on Sunday. You can leave a comment on the YouTube show as well. Well, there are 236 patrons of the show. Your generosity means that I get to do this every single day. Thousands of people are listening and learning about EVs, and it's the Patreon supporters who make it happen. If you want to check out what it's all about, no pressure. Have a look. It's like the price of a posh coffee or two once a month. It's Patreon, patreon.com/EVNewsDaily. There are 699 shows in the archive. All of my archive costs and all those kind of things are funded by Patreon, my premium partners, Phil Roberts of Electric Future, Brad Crosby, Avid Technology, and Brightsmith Group as well. A nice fourth name to add to the podcast list. Well, thank you very much for listening today. Have a wonderful day, whatever you are up to. Catch you tomorrow. And remember, there is no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.